Well, it's a beautiful day here in Minnesota, and I've been meaning to do this video for a little while. Had somebody request it again, so I said, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and get this one knocked out. So today, I'm going to talk about a whole bunch of related colors that all hinge on one gene, and that is the barring gene. So I'm going to cover barred, cuckoo, doms, bulicos, creoles, all of them. I'll talk about this pen another day. I just built it, finished it up last night actually, and got these birds in there. So, this first pen here, I have a pair of white-crested Polish. The hen is a white-crested black. The cockbird is white-crested cuckoo. He's got one copy of the gene. The second pen are white-crested cuckoos, a white-crested cuckoo hen that I trimmed in that video the other day, with a white-crested cuckoo male. But if you'll notice, his hackles are a lot lighter than this one over here. And finally, we got this white-crested cuckoo rooster in this pen. But if you notice, his color is significantly lighter than the previous two. Get down. Now you don't want to come out. There we go. So, why is it that this third male is so much lighter than the previous two? Well, basically, what the deal is with the inheritance of barring, you've got males and females where the females can only have the gene or not. So if they don't inherit the gene, they come out solid color, as is the case with the white-crested black hen. If they do inherit the gene, they're white-crested cuckoos. Males, on the other hand, can either have the gene as 2 doses, or homozygous, which is that male on the end over here, or 1 dose, which is heterozygous, which is the males in the first 2 pens. So that male there and this male are both heterozygous for the barring gene. Now the barring gene itself is related to the gender of the parents as far as inheritance goes. It's what they call sex-linked. And this is where a lot of your commercial egg layers are come into play, because they use barring so that once the chicks hatch, they can tell right off the bat which ones are the males and which ones are the females. And that's because the barring on a chick, you can tell even before they get their feathers, because they'll have a white dot on their head. Now, with the white-crested Polish, obviously you can't see it. But in your creoles and any of your dom game fowl that are on a dark-colored chick, you'll see a white dot. Most American game fowl are based on the Wheaton gene, and since that is the case, they come out light-colored and you can't see the dot. But trust me, it's there. Now another little factor that happens with the barring gene is you cannot get green legs or blue legs. That barring gene inhibits those. And if you look closely at the feet on this male, I don't know how well you're going to see this, but his legs are white with little blue bits on them. I got me a tripod. I'm trying to set everything up here so we can have something decent to look at. But anyway, they've got these little colored dots on there, and that is because the barring gene, as it restricts the pigment in the feathers, it also restricts the pigment in the legs. So if you're breeding blue leg, as is the case with Polish, you're going to get white legs out of that with little blue dots on them. If you're breeding yellow leg, you're going to get if you're breeding green leg, you're going to get yellow legs with little green dots on them most of the time. Now, as you can see in this male, he does have some solid colored feathers in him. And we see that in our game chickens too. So that's something you got to breed against. Doesn't matter what breed you're going. Now your Crele Old English, they are a very specific color. And this color gets, the name Crele gets thrown around. You hear of Crele Polish. Well, technically there are no true Crele Polish in the United States. There's some that appear to be in Poland, but I suspect they're not quite true Creoles either. And that is because Crele, as defined by the American Poultry Association and Bantam Association, is barring on BB red. So if you breed two Creoles together, you're going to get a couple of different possible. Okay, if your male has only one copy of the gene, half of the pullets are going to come out solid color, so in this case BB red. The other half will come out barred, in this case Crele. Your males will all come out the same way on that cross. You'll get some that are barred, some that are... Let me back up a minute. If you're breeding a single copy Crele male to a Crele female, you will get half and half on your pullets, and then half of your cockerels will be single barred Crele, and the other half will be double barred Crele. Now, if you breed a double barred Crele male to a Crele female, everything's going to come out Crele as well. The only thing is, all of your males are going to be double Crele. Now, I'm no expert on Creoles, but I will say from what I can see in the photos of the ones winning the shows, it appears that you need to breed in a manner that produces males with only one copy of the barring, and that's your exhibition males. Okay? Just like with these cuckoo Polish, the ones you show are the single copy, like this male in front of us here. The one clear to the end that's super light, you can use him for breeding. Which brings me to my next point. If you have a double cuckoo or a double barred Crele or double barred whatever male, and you breed it to solid females, you'll get all barred offspring. And the reason for that is going back to that sex linkage. The barring, one gene goes to half his daughters, the other gene goes to the other half of the daughters. So since he's got two copies, all of the daughters will be barred. All of the sons, however, will be getting a color, if you want to think of it as a Q, a color Q from their mom and their father. So therefore, they would be one copy barred or heterozygous barred. Now, what's the difference between barred and cuckoo? Well, from what I've read, barring and cuckoo are the exact same thing, but there's an additional factor, and that additional factor is feather growth. The speed at which the feather grows determines the pattern. If the birds feather out very slow, you get a tight feather. And that's why exhibition barred rocks look really ugly as teenagers, because their feathers grow so slowly. But they have the crispest, tightest barring you can find as far as I'm concerned. Cuckoo is what happens when that gene is on a fast feather growth. And I've seen ones where the barring is very, very muddy and not very discernible because the feathers grow so fast. So you want to keep that in mind when you're breeding. Now, luckily, if you're breeding Old English Bantams, there's several guys out there who are already working with them quite a bit, and I would suggest getting in touch with them if you can. They can give you all the insights on that I can't. But let's go back to the difference between these two males. As I said, the one on the right is more proper of a white-crested cuckoo, whereas the one on the left, his hackles are noticeably lighter. So what's going on there? Well, that male, first of all, I would reckon he's got a gold gene in him, because most white-cresteds do. And if you look at his shoulders, they have a little bit of a gold cast. His hackles, however, are silver, which tells me that he's probably split for the silver and gold genes. Same concept as a golden duckwing when you cross your reds to your grays. Or a black gray in gamefowl when you cross a gray to a brown red. But what's happening here is the underlying pattern, which in the case of Polish is birchen or brown red, is trying to leak through to the surface. So if this bird was solid black, he would probably have a bunch of silver showing in his hackle. So he is not ideal, as he is not a solid patterned bird all throughout. Now, leakage in the hens of a cuckoo is a lot less noticeable, because really the only place you would see leakage would be in their necks. So you got to get real up close and look at that. Now, going back to this male, the homozygous or double barred. That color looks a lot like some of the doms you see, doesn't it? Well, what's going on here is barring is basically a form of dilution, and he is showing a high amount of dilution. And in some of these gamefowl families, what I think the case is that they've got so many generations of dom bred into them that they've gotten to the point where they are breeding nothing but homozygous males who are getting lighter and lighter and lighter, on top of there being leakage from their underlying patterns. So you might have doms that have a lot of gray blood in them, and they're going to look even more whiter. Or you might have doms that are showing some red. Another thing you got to keep in mind is some of these dom families probably simultaneously have the spangled gene, because people just like crossing for performance when it comes to game chickens. So you've got two different factors that are adding what we would call visible white. It's not genetic white, it just looks white, to the same bird. and it's overall creating a whiter bird. Now, here's where it gets complicated. So as I said, Crele is barring on BB red. But what happens when you put barring on a brown red? Well, that's basically what the quote-unquote Crele Polish should be. They're not, but that's what they should be. But you can't technically call them Crele because they're based on a completely different genetic allele. So the proper term, being as how the barred pattern in Polish is called a cuckoo, would be to call them a golden cuckoo. There's also the color called silver cuckoo. You don't really see either one in proper form in Polish. The only breed that I know of off the top of my head where you could probably see a good example would be the Maran, or the Marans. You can actually add barring to any color pattern. The thing is most of those combinations don't have recognized names because nobody has really bred them and set them as a line. And you can do all kinds of color combinations. In Orpingtons, they have things like chocolate cuckoo or lavender cuckoo. So that is your barring gene plus additional color factors such as lavender or chocolate. But just like dominant white or blue or whatever, you can really add it to anything. I mean, you could make a barred red pile, in which case you would have a mostly white bird, and in the areas where you would see red, the red would be interrupted by white barring. You could put it on, I already talked about brown reds and birchins. You could put it on a gold duckwing. There's at least one guy I know of who's working on silver Crele Bantams. You could make blue Crele, but that brings you up to another problem. See, most of the examples I've seen involving blue and barring yield birds who do not have good, crisp markings all through the body. Most of those markings show up where the bird would normally be black. So on a solid blue bird, if you made a blue barred, your best barring is going to be in the hackle, shoulder, and saddle of the male and in the neck of the female, whereas most of the barring on the female would be just in the neck, and the blue, because it is a diluter of black, and barring is a diluter of black, creates a very faint, muddy marking. So, just circling back, I guess, to the Creles themselves, since that was what prompted this, you can breed them Crele to Crele or BB red to Crele. And it all kind of depends on if you're going to show males and females, or just males, how you want to go about it. Now, as far as game chickens go, if you want to make your own line of DOMs, which, by the way, the reason they're called DOMs is because the barring pattern reminds people in the gamefowl community of the Dominique, which is a very old breed of American dual-purpose chicken. It's rose-combed, and it is what they consider cuckoo pattern. So it's actually, most of the show Dominiques I've seen are crisper marked than in the Polish, and your cuckoo pattern tends to be more irregular in spacing, whereas the barring is more even, and that goes back to the growth factor. But that's where they get the name. That's why they call them Dominiques, or DOMs, is because of the Dominique. But if you want to make your own line of Dominiques, or DOMs, you only need one barred bird, because it is a dominant trait, and you can breed that trait to your tried and true bloodline and then just keep back crossing over and over and over and over to your original blood. And as long as you are always breeding one barred bird in those matings, you could get it down to 1/64th Dom and 63/64th hatch if you want, and it'll still look like a Dom. The good side of that is also, if you don't like Dom color, but you have some Doms that you really, really like them in other regards, you can breed that color out of them. Because if they don't show it, they don't have it. So as long as you're getting a couple solid colored birds out of that mating, those are the ones you got to select for. So I think I've rattled on long enough about the pattern. If there's more questions, I can make a second video. That's not a problem. But thank you for the questions. And I haven't forgot about the request to do a video on dark skin. I just don't feel I know the subject material well enough to put a video out on that yet. But I'm still reading up on it. So thank you for watching. Have a good one.